Hello, you're listening to Talkin Music with Joshua Kirk. On this show, I speak with musicians about albums they've made, their careers, shows they've played, and a range of other topics. My guest is a singer, songwriter, and guitarist known primarily as the co-frontman of the Philadelphia rock band Dr. Dog, and that is Scott McMicken. His latest album, Shebang, was intended to be his solo debut and ended up the debut album of one of his newest projects, the ever expanding. In this interview, I spoke with Scott about his storied relationship with the guitar, how Shebang came together, the long running evolution of Dr. Dog, and his other new band, the Hypos. So without further ado, I hope you all enjoy my interview with Scott McMicken, my guest on Talkin' Music with Joshua Kirk.
What's up, Josh?
Yeah, how are you, man?
Good. Long time no see, man.
Oh yeah. I think we should just dive right into it.
Yeah, what's up?
So as of right now, January 2024, Dr. Dog has been active as a band for almost 25 years. So yeah, I'm kind of wondering how it feels to have been rocking for this span of time.
Oh, it feels good, man. Yeah, I think that I guess I'd say generally speaking, the process of being a part of the band has always felt good, warts and all. There's your ups and downs naturally, but on the whole,
Hmm.
it's just kind of flown by, I guess. And something I'm beginning to notice, which is definitely an attribute of what you gain when you've been a part of something for a really long time, is that at this point, in addition to just loving being in the band and loving everybody in the band, I'm also proud to have been a part of it for so long and to have contributed to just so much work and experiences over the years. I mean, not even just touting our music or anything, but like all of the life experience. I mean, my entire adult life has been on the road. I met you, I've met so many people. um you just, yeah, I can't really separate a lot of the kind of big crucial elements of what my life is from the fact that that I have been in the band for so long and traveling and meeting people and generally participating in the culture of music on some little corner.
Oh yeah. I definitely feel that for sure. But you were kind of well known as being one of the main singers and songwriters of the band, you alongside Toby Lehman, and you're also like the lead guitarist. So uh, since I have this drum machine right behind me, thought I was wondering if you would mind weighing in on your relationship with the guitar.
Yeah, totally. It's it's a question I'm happy to talk about because I've been thinking about guitar at this point in my life more than ever. I think generally speaking, I would sum up most of my life up until more recently. And when I say more recently, I mean like maybe the last couple years. My thoughts about guitar playing have changed a lot. Um, and I would summarize my thoughts prior to these last couple years about towards guitar as like pretty irreverent. Like I've always viewed the guitar almost like a necessary utility. Like,
Yeah.
for example, if you know Dr. Dog, you know that when you go to the show, it's a real guitar driven show.
Oh
There's two
yeah.
guitars.
It's a rock show through and through.
Yeah, that's like, and I feel like that's just sort of the utility of an electric guitar in a live music context. There's a functionality to it. But
Yeah.
most of the time when we're making our songs and really just envisioning how we'd like our songs to think and feel, it's not, we don't know. I don't always go right to like put the rock guitar on it. I often will like save, I will think about guitar last. Like to me, when you're
Mm.
actually with a band in a studio and you get to do your song, one of the biggest thrills is like, what else can happen except for guitar? Because to me, I guess in a way, I just have a sort of tortured relationship with guitar. I'm very weary of the sort of tropes of the rock theatrics and the sort of guitar-y heroics and stuff. Like that's
Mm.
not something I've ever been that's something I've always been weary of. And most of my favorite guitarists, like Mark Ribot and Steve Malkmus,
Yeah.
even like surf guitarists, the Ventures and Ernest Ranglin, guitarists where either rock just isn't really the go-to default mode, or if it is, it's with a certain degree of irreverence or abstraction. That's when I like rock guitar. I mean, it's hard to speak in generalizations because there's obviously so many exceptions. But all I mean to say is that for many years, I've had a sort of tortured relationship to the guitar. And I've just kind of reacted to that fact by using it as sort of an abstract thing, like as somebody who's the lead guitarist in the band and doing a lot of solos. My solo style is usually, I try to kind of go off the rails. I mean,
Yeah.
thankfully for me, I'm not good enough to not, I fall off the rails easily. I don't love when guitar sounds well played, I guess is what it comes down to. And that
That's
it's a
fair.
nuanced point, but I like when there's a certain character and a certain flaw. And I guess that's true across all my taste within music, production, drums, like that. I like when things sort of embody a certain degree of jankiness to them that speaks to me on some level. And that's the way I've always rolled with guitar. And in my hands, that's how I've always chose to use it. But more and more, I've really become to realize what a powerful instrument it is once
Yeah.
you get outside of the tropes of it and get more inside of it, almost like a piano. Like it's so easy to go from here to here. It's so easy to be at one volume. It's so easy to use your whole arm to play it that essentially it's really easy to lose all the nuance really fast if you aren't really good. And I'm not really good. So, like, more recently, I'm realizing, if I scale the dynamics back and I realize how different a low note from a high note is, and I realize how different a soft pluck of the right hand is versus a full hit of the arm, if I really acknowledge the range of expression in all of those elements, then the guitar starts to feel more like a piano to me, where like
Oh
you
yeah.
can occupy small places, think about the arrangement, be like, oh, well, there's a lot of chords coming off that organ and the bass is really low and busy. Why don't I just sort of get out of that domain and find a smaller place to be? And so a lot of different ideas are developing for me as of recently about the guitar, and it has all amounted to me, um, kind of falling in love with it all over again. And none of that has to do with like new tones or anything. Like I'm happier now than ever just playing a guitar that feels good and plugging it into an amp that feels good. I'm not one of those people that's gone deep into like the tone sculpting world of effects pedals and that sort of thing. So yeah, in a nutshell, I've always sort of like had a somewhat tortured relationship with the guitar and at best treated it like a utility to play rock music. And now I'm beginning to open up to the more nuanced aspects of how what a soulful and cool instrument it can be.
And you were mentioning some of the guitar players earlier that who's are a little more abstract and play it in an interesting way. And uh, the player that I thought of is actually Nels Klein, the guitarist from Wilco. Like
Yeah.
like great example of like doing really interesting things with the guitar. And I think a perfect balance between really focusing on the nuance and also kind of yeah in a way kind of uh showcasing kind of the more jagged aspects of it too. And like there's definitely a couple of Wilco songs I'm thinking of where it's like half of it is like a song and then the other half is just him just straight up just going like nuts. Like
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
great example. Yeah. He's
But
very artful. I think pointing him out is helpful to the point to this conversation because yeah, he's perfect because in a way he does use the guitar in the rock way. He'll get
yeah,
loud, he'll get fierce, he'll get violent with it
yeah.
in the way that it's so wired to do the rock and roll loud amplifier thing, but he always does it with some degree of artfulness and mindfulness and abstraction that essentially in the end makes him I like almost seem off the rails or out of control or something. And I think that like that's the kind of vibe I really like in guitar is when it feels like not so in control. When
or
somebody
or
sounds
like
perfectly in control, I just sort of lose interest.
say or like I'm even thinking of like Adrian Lenker's crazy solo on like Not the Big Thief track,
Oh,
something
she's
like
an amazing guitarist. Yeah,
yeah. But yeah,
totally.
but kind of speaking of the guitar, on your solo debut, Shebang, you took a major risk this time around by playing almost no guitar on the album,
I don't know if
outside
I
of a
played
few
any
licks.
guitar. Yeah.
Um, so I'm kind of wondering if this move was intentional, and if so, what have you taken away from it?
It was intentional, and I've taken away a lot from it. That's a cool question. Thank you for asking that, because I mostly just I went into that whole situation having no idea, obviously, how things were going to turn out, and there was no. If there was a vision for that process, it had more to do with not being in control, basically, like making good with my friend Nick who produced it, like making good decisions about who might be good to invite, but then after that, like letting the thing happen according to what everybody individually brought. So I guess what I mean to say is it was my solo album, but I didn't really take much control over it. And in fact, even for me, I didn't even want to play guitar because I just wanted to hear somebody else's ideas, you know? I wanted to like just be a singer. I wanted to just be like the director of a song. I wanted to just be the person who said, I wrote this song and it means this to me. And in my mind, it sort of feels like this. And like sort of just see how people would react to that. And Paul Castelluzzo, who played guitar on that album, is another one of my favorite modern guitarists. So I was thrilled to hear him play guitar. I mean, like I said, I'm just coming off of a lifelong relationship of being the tortured guitarist. So it wasn't hard for me to like let the guitar go, especially since it was going to be Paul playing it.
Yeah.
Because I was such a fan of his. So a lot of that was just like the desire to hear other people's ideas, especially on the guitar and across all instruments, an openness to something new, a desire for myself to just be a little bit more like untethered to the music so that as a singer I could just kind of be off the rhythm of it and stuff and not feel locked into it by what my body was doing with the guitar um and just sort of take a different role inside of the music. I mean, essentially that whole album was me trying everything I could do to do it differently, and it worked out beautifully. And so the takeaways are now like, I mean, one big takeaway for me was like how much I enjoyed being that collaborative. And it's not that Dr. Dog isn't a collaborative band, but we have existed for so long that there's really well established dynamics among us. But in the case of doing Shebang and doing everything differently with a whole new group of people, it was a much more 360 kind of collaboration, and with no history or pretense about how things were supposed to be. And I basically came out of that feeling like I would like to focus more in that way. I would like to continue to make music more in that way where I'm not trying to be thinking about what's the beat, what do the keyboards do? Just like let go more and focus on what I do, sing and write songs and play guitar every now and again. So essentially, I left those sessions feeling much more focused as a musician, whereas prior to that, I felt like I was more the producer brain, wanting to think about every aspect of the sound of the music and the choice of the effects and the snare drum and all, you know,
Yeah.
all of it. But now I'm just like, oh man, it feels so much more inspiring to just focus on fewer things and try to do them as well as you can, which for me is sing and write and play guitar. And like, and then with regards to all the rest of what goes on in the music, just surround yourself with good, open, supportive, creative people, and witness something beyond your um vision come to light out of that collaborative vibe.
I definitely get that, especially considering, yeah, I've read how you had never met a lot of these people before, and yeah, like working with a new group of people can certainly be very nerve-wracking, but also kind of beautiful experience. And yeah, you're essentially forcing yourself to take a few risks. And in a way, I imagine it makes it a little easier because all you really had to do was just focus on like making sure like like yeah, the your vocal sounded good on like every song and yeah, I notice in the liner notes you're credited playing something called a Mirage. Can you tell me what that is? Yeah.
Oh yeah, can you I can't see myself on the screen, but can you see that cardboard box right there?
Yeah.
More importantly, can you see I'm in my studio right now.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, if you saw Dr. Dog in the last 5 years, you probably saw me playing this weird keyboard on stage,
Yeah.
loading up these floppy disks,
Oh yeah.
and Sonic Mirage. This is an instrument that my old friend Nathan Sabatino turned me on to,
Yeah.
and it's uh it's basically just a keyboard, like it's like an 80s keyboard. I think the rap on it is that it was like one of the first like kind of consumer level sampling keyboards. I think previous to it coming out in the early 80s, every version of a sampler was a really expensive, really complicated thing. And Sonic came out with this like normal looking keyboard that was an 8-bit sampling keyboard that you
Yeah.
could load. You could buy their library of samples on those discs, or you could make your own. Um, and then load them into this keyboard and then play the keyboard like a sampler, which nowadays is the most basic thing in the world. But in the early 80s, the Ensoniq Mirage kind of came out and like shook the world of sampling a little bit, I believe.
Yeah.
And from what I understand too, which is one of the things I love about it so much, is that I think it was primarily initially like um embraced in the world of like film scores and movie soundtracks and television and stuff.
Oh yeah,
And
that
I
makes
feel like
sense.
on some psychic level, like when you use that instrument and load in those sounds, you feel all this nostalgia from it. And I think it's literally because we've all heard these sounds like throughout the 80s in so many different productions, musically and cinematically and stuff. And so I just love it. I think it's a fascinating instrument.
Now, most of the songs on this record, Shebang, I know were written on an acoustic guitar built by Ruben Cox, whose guitars are given a thorough retrofit. So I'm kind of wondering what about this guitar like makes you gravitate towards it so much.
A big part of why, when I say in the last couple of years things have changed for me in the way that I think about guitar, have actually to do with
Yeah,
that guitar you mentioned,
yeah,
the one Ruben Cox made.
yeah,
Um, because it sounds so unique and dry and percussive. It doesn't say you don't you play it and it doesn't sound like rock music and it doesn't
yeah,
sound like folk music or something. It just sounds almost like, and mine's baritone too, so it's really low and it has flat wound strings.
yeah,
And it's this acoustic electric thing. So it's really, oh, and the rubber bridge, which kind of takes all the treble and the like sustain out of it. So it sounds very dry
yeah,
and it just occupies like a zone that is neither tired old singer songwriter folk acoustic guitar thing, and
yeah.
it's not rock either. And it's sort of in a jazzier sort of vibe, but it feels really janky to me. Like you have to be very careful how you play it because it will kind of implode on itself really easily. And so it has every characteristic I love, and it's in particular the percussiveness of it. And just I would say that one thing that has been driving like a new direction
Yeah.
for me in music at this stage in life is just like a greater love of rhythm and different rhythms and learning more about rhythms and stuff. And it's just a guitar that's really suited towards like cool rhythms because it's so dry. You play a
Yeah.
note and it's just like boom. You don't, there's no ring to it. So it's almost more like playing a marimba or something. It's kind of like
Oh yeah, so it
punctuated.
totally makes sense. I'm hearing on Wreck Exile, I'm hearing that guitar paired with actual marimba. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Now I want to talk about more about uh your full-time band, the one you're known for, Dr. Dog. So as you can see from all the vinyl I have up there, like you guys have made a lot of records. Like you actually have 10 studio albums to date. And the most recent one, Critical Equation, came out April 27th, 2018. And but since you've made this many albums at this point, and it's been years since the last one. I'm kind of wondering what improvements would you say you have made over this many albums?
I think, I mean, I don't know. It's interesting you ask because we have a new one done. It just got finished like a month ago, and we're
Oh,
figuring
cool.
out. Yeah, we finished it like right before Christmas, and now we're trying to figure out like how soon we can get it out and stuff. And I would say that um maybe in a lot of ways this newest one represents like what it is we've learned,
Yeah,
perhaps. I don't know. I can only speak for myself, and
yeah,
I know one thing I know, and I observe more sensitively now than I ever have, is that even though we've been a band for a long time, everybody's different and everybody looks at it differently. And so there's no reality where after a lot of time you all just merge into one blob that operates as a single entity. If
yeah.
anything, you almost become even more of individuals naturally as you progress. And so to do what we do together now feels even more of a kind of assemblage of many different perspectives, more so than it ever did. And so I think like with that being the case, I think maybe something we've gotten better at, or at least trying to get better at, is being able to like see each other um in more supportive ways. And I guess yeah, aesthetically and artistically, I feel like the band has always been a grab bag, free to try and do whatever methods or ways of going, and that's still true. So for me, really what it boils down to as far as what you get better at is like understanding each other and feeling free around each other. That doesn't always happen, you know. I think anyone in a band knows that. Like you can't just assume that every time you're together and working that everything's going to feel free and easy, because that would be an unreasonable expectation to set up. So I think for me, the bulk of what I feel we have gotten better at and what I will remain committed to getting even better at has more to do with our interpersonal relationships.
But yeah, I'm glad that you've kind of come to that conclusion. And like your discography, I think is really fascinating in terms of like um the Dr. Dog sound kind of becomes harder to define with each release. Like you can't really be put in a box because I feel like I mean when people think of Dr. Dog, they're probably thinking more records like We All Belong or Fate and stuff like that. But ever since then, you've kind of evolved interesting ways and kind of in a way we're sort of doing things similar to what you had done before, but a little differently. Probably the best example is probably B Room. Like that album is like out of all your records seems the most just all over the place, like sonically and also in terms of there's some songs that have the whole band and then others that only have like a couple of members on them. So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like your it's like the White Album, but just more condensed in a way. And without the drama probably too.
Yeah,
And I've even reviewed five of those records myself. I've done Shame Shame, Be the Void,
I've seen those. Yeah.
Psychedelic Swamp, the new version of that, Abandoned Mansion, and the latest one. But now, like kind of the other significant thing about you guys is being a Philadelphia band, and you've actually played shows with other artists from that area, including The Teeth and Purling Hiss, who are a little more obscure, and then Hopalong and Alex G that I feel like are more widely celebrated. So I'm kind of wondering, yeah, yeah. How does it feel to like play shows with other artists from Philly, and are there any other ones from there you like?
Being from Philly and getting our start there and stuff, I feel like Philly played the character of being from Philly. I feel like really sinks in when you're from Philly. I mean, you see it in the sports teams too and stuff, but
Yeah,
I know that like that's true of every city or whatever. But just speaking on behalf of somebody from Philly, I feel like there's a lot of like pride in the city of Philadelphia when you're from there, and and so it does add an extra sort of bond when like when you play with bands from also from there or something. Yeah, I feel like there's like a sort of a PA vibe in general that you can sniff out like instantly. I notice it with people from Scranton. Like
Yeah.
Scranton just kind of feels like it's got the same allure as Philly does to me, as far as the people I've met from there and the vibe that comes off people in PA. I like you mentioned Alex G and those guys. Like the first time we met them and played with them, I was just like, yeah, like, you wouldn't even have to tell me these dudes are from PA. I could have told you even if I didn't know, like there is something to it that
Oh, and
southeastern
some of those
PA.
artists are huge. I mean, like Mike Alex G is like really, really blowing up right now.
Yeah, and Hopalong too. Like they're great, and we share our studio with them now too. And Joe
Mm.
from that band does a lot of recording and engineering
Oh yeah, Joe
out of our
Reinhardt. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and he helped us with our new album actually. Um, so yeah, there's just so many good Philly people. I mean, truthfully, it's been over a decade since I've lived there. We still have our studio, and I still consider it a home away from home and spend a lot of time there. But I moved to Connecticut and then I moved to Arizona. Now I live in North Carolina and I can't claim
Oh,
Philly
nice.
anymore. I go back and I don't even really know how to get a burrito anymore.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But yeah, I'll go ahead and flag a few other artists from Philly that I happen to really like. I mean Japanese Breakfast, like we were talking earlier about like really good guitarists yeah, and Michelle Zauner, man, like yeah, she can really just like shred and Mannequin Pussy as well. Like I'm so excited for they've got a record coming out.
Awesome.
And then I also have a little bit of nostalgia for G Love and Special Sauce too.
Yeah.
Uh so besides Dr. Dog and the ever expanding, you also happen to be now part of another new band named the Hypos, and
Yeah, you know
they
about that?
yeah,
Nice.
I know they just released their self-titled debut album on January 5th, which yeah, fun fact, happens to be my birthday. Uh,
Oh, that's wonderful.
I'm kind of wondering what your main intention is behind this project, and yeah, and how did the band come together?
Do you know Greg Cartwright by chance? Have you heard
Uh,
of that?
uh, not really until yeah, hearing about this new project.
I highly recommend checking out his world of music. He's been putting out music under various names since
Yeah.
the 80s. And I've been a fan for a really long time. And in particular, uh, he was in a band called the Oblivions or Oblivions for a while. And that was like sort of in the 90s, I think, on into the late 90s. And then he was in a band called Raining Sound. Um, anyway, he's just been making music a long time, and he's so I I uh I look up to him so much. And I met him maybe about 8 years ago or more even on a Dr. Dog tour. And he lives in Asheville. He lives in Asheville and in Memphis, basically. And we were in Asheville playing, and I reached out to him through another mutual friend who played in Floating Action. If you remember, if you know that band, Floating Action, who's from Asheville. Anyway, a lot of dumb details, but invited Greg Cartwright to a Dr. Dog show many years ago as a fan. He came, we had a wonderful time. It was awesome to meet him. I felt like a total super fan. There's very few people I've met and felt that enamored of. He just really is such a soulful. When you get into his music, like you just realize he's so soulful. And so, to meet him, I was just having to manage all of the experiences I've had as a fan of his music and stuff. And all of that is to say I met him as a super fan, but then 2 years ago I moved to Asheville, um, and started hanging out with them, and the band Hypos was born out of us just hanging out playing songs together. And it's been one of the most wonderful things that's ever happened to me, honestly. I don't know how to even, it'd take a whole other podcast to talk about what that process has been like, going from meeting him and becoming closer friends with him, especially at this point in life for myself and at this point in life for him. We're both at sort of new junctures in our lives creatively. And the pairing has just been a really inspiring and supportive kind of like new friendship and partnership. And then the music that we make has just kind of been unfolding out of that reality. And then the other members of the band, Evan Martin, Kevin Williams, and Krista Roten, same goes for all them. They're new people in my life that I now love so much and enjoy hanging out with so much. And the effortlessness with which the music comes out of those times together is really striking and so deeply satisfying to me, that I could just go on and on about how much I love it and value it. But it also is embedded with so many lessons about making music and how important it is to be um, free, for lack of a better word, to feel like yourself and feel okay with that, and to feel like you can take chances and to feel like you're not afraid to fail. To do all that while in the presence of microphones and with instruments in your hands is really such a joy. And it sounds simple, but it's not super easy to find.
Oh yeah, it was kind of like you talk about like coming to people as like a super fan. Like yeah, that's kind of how I felt when I like when it was first like meeting you and like Dr. Dog and stuff. Yeah, because as I tell you,
I
yeah, before
remember it,
the
man. That was like 10 years ago or more.
yeah, it would be like I mean July this year, it'd be damn 11 years ago that that
11
happened.
years ago.
Yeah, that yeah, but before that I definitely I had spent like a couple of months like, kind of going back and listening to all of the stuff you had done like up until that point because it was like because like at the time Be the Void was the recent album and of course when I met you it was like the whole like B Room rollout began and yeah it's so funny how just yeah, I vividly remember all that like even sitting here like at 23 now.
Me
Yes,
too, man. It's so strange.
that speaking of you playing shows, 2.5 years after your last tour, your band is set to play at Red Rocks in Morrison, Colorado on July 18th. So yeah, I'm kind of wondering how it feels to be playing your first show together as Dr. Dog since 2021.
Oh, it feels awesome, man. I mean, it's pretty much a dream, to be able to just like like we're just kind of, we have all this time in our life now to be exploring all these other things, and everybody is in their own way, but we're all still committed to the band. And we, like I said, we spent from the summer till the fall, like till Christmas, working on our new album. And so we're all still very much in our hearts in the band, but without touring, there's just like all of this other time to kind of experience other aspects of life, which I ultimately think really benefit the band. I know for myself, like being able to step away from it and also doing other projects with other people has given me a greater kind of awareness of what Dr. Dog is about, and what our strengths are and stuff. And so all of these things just kind of create a nice period of time being in Dr. Dog for me at this point, like including the ability to just like get together and play a single show without having to go back on tour for like several weeks at a time and stuff. And um yeah, no, it just feels like a retirement mode or something, like just kick back and like make things the way you want to make them, play a show when you want to play it, and do whatever the hell else you want to do. I'm really into the way things are now.
But yeah, I mean, I definitely knew that like even though you're not really going on a tour for a few months anymore, like that eventually you would play another show and yeah, I definitely knew that like I mean that the fans would be very excited about it, and I know you and other members also have your own projects, kind of keeping you busy. Like Toby has his own solo stuff. Eric's had his own music for actually uh years by now, and
Hmm.
also yeah, playing drums with yeah people like Waxahachie bring up another kind of Philly type indie artist there, to and yeah, I'm really happy that you guys are able to play another show, and yeah, I definitely I wish you all the best, like for sure on that.
Thank you, man. I
Uh
appreciate that.
that but on that note, I kind of want to tie things up a little bit by ending on a somewhat personal note. So obviously,
Sure.
I've known the Dr. Dog guys since 2013, like we just alluded to. And I'm just really grateful for all the interactions we've had, like especially like years later having you on the second podcast that I happen to be the host of. And since I've known you for so long, I'm kind of wondering like if it was maybe you or someone else in the band that like first discovered my YouTube channel, and how that kind of began this whole relationship.
Well, I remember Zach. I think your parents had reached out to us on our band email, maybe. I can't remember
Uh,
exactly how the contact was established, but I believe it was Zach who first caught wind of you or had heard from you, or maybe heard that you were like you're coming to a show or something.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I think it might have been Zach who first informed us about you and that you were coming out to the show, and then we met you and we just been friends ever since. Um, and I appreciate your kind words because you've always been such a thoughtful um, fan and critic of music alike, and I feel like the fact that you're even still interested to talk to me, it definitely feels to me like a strong boost of to my confidence, like just because I know how, and I watch your reviews and I keep up with what you're doing too and stuff. And so I know how insightful you are about music. And so the fact that you're still so supportive about us is very meaningful to me too, man.
it just feels so cool that like this whole relationship with this interview is kind of coming full circle, and I'm
Yeah.
happy because I started using Instagram like a couple of years ago, and I and I had started following you before you sent me the message. Like, yeah, it's been a long time. Would love to see each other again. And then when I was starting this podcast, yeah, I knew that like yeah, I had to reach out. Um, but but since we're talking about social media, I was kind of wondering if you would mind letting our listeners know where we can find you uh on there.
Oh, sure. Well, there's, Dr. Dog is, I believe, at Dr. Dog Music is the
Yes.
handle for the Dr. Dog social media.
Yeah.
And my own personal one, which is kind of this like multifaceted one-stop shop for most all the other things I'm doing outside of Dr. Dog, is based around my wife and I's cassette label called Press On Records.
Yeah.
And that one is at Press On Records, I think it's called.
Oh
And
yeah.
that is where I post about like things related to the ever expanding. And also we put out tons and tons of music on there, but just on the cassette only format. And then yeah, it's just kind of a one-stop shop for a lot of the other little projects I've got going on in life. And now Hypos has a Instagram now too, now that we put our record out, and that is just the Hypos Band, at the Hypos Band.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, Scott, it's been a real pleasure to have you on Talking Music, and in general, it's just awesome to be able to just like talk again. Like our nerding out and our ramblings kind of feel like kind of feel productive for once. Yeah.
Yeah, good call. Well, I agree, man. I'm glad you reached out, and congrats on doing this podcast. It's awesome.
Good to talk to you. Yeah.
Love
I'll
it,
see you
man.
later, man.
Yeah, thank you so much, Josh. Take care. Say hi to your folks for me.
Oh, yeah, I will. If you want to learn more about Scott and check out his records, just check out the link to his website and my reviews of 5 Dr. Dog albums below in the description. Also, be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a nice comment. If you have any suggestions for future improvements I can make for the show, I'd be glad to hear them. You can also find me at my Facebook and Instagram links down below. Talkin' Music is edited by Louisa Phillips. Thank you to Scott McMicken for participating and to you for listening. Have a good day, everyone.